Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. That mind is always absorbed in material conception. This is my body, this is mine, this is mine, this is mine. It goes on extending from selfish to extended selfishness. So this point has to be very clear that subtle body is actually the cause. See, gross body has nothing much to do, but the subtle body is actually the cause of the rebirth, that the person takes. Because subtle body gets molded in such a way with a lot of impressions, a lot of vasanas, and a lot of desires that it creates the next gross body. Therefore, it's very important to control the subtle body, which consists of mind and intelligence. But it is always restless. Mind is restless, intelligence is restless. So in this way, somehow the devotee has to come to this point of controlling this restless mind and going above this material conception that is there. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he gives one of the meaning of laulyam as restlessness. Very nice, deep and technical article on laulyam. The three meanings of laulyam that Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur says laulyam means restlessness, greed and desire. These are the three meanings of laulyam. And now in his own technical scholarly way he presents these three very, very wonderfully. Very important for all of us to meditate on these three, because all of us will be troubled by these three. Restlessness is of two kinds. Restlessness of the mind and restlessness of the intelligence. Let's talk about first the restlessness of the mind. So mind has the propensity for following the dictates of the senses. The senses will dictate, the senses want to do something, mind will help in various ways. So mind follows the dictation of the senses. And the other way also is true. Mind dictates in various ways. And when the mind follows the dictates of the senses and becomes absorbed in a particular subject, attachment or aversion arises. Now senses, eyes want to see something. And the mind is going ahead and helping in various ways. Now what happens? By doing that particular activity, maybe the comparison with the past samskaras might happen. And then the decision will be taken to get attached or to go away from that place. So attachment or aversion. So whenever senses and sense object come together, mind will have these two things that will come up. One is attachment and one is aversion. And both are very, very dangerous in this material world. Both has the power to keep us in this material world. Aversion also keeps in the material world. Attachment also keeps a person in the material world. Therefore, for brahmacharis, in brahmachari classes it is said, there is no question of being attached to a female. And at the same time, there is no question of being averse to a female. So, kya kare? Neutral state. Like there is an ant roaming around, and so many ants will be there. But we are least bothered. Are you attached to the ant? No. Are you averse to the ant? No. That is what is the behavior of a renunciant that is expected when it comes to various sense objects of this material world. So restlessness of the mind is again he is categorizing into two. Restlessness due to attachment and restlessness due to aversion. So both are going to cause restlessness. And very nicely, Srimad Bhagavad Gita describes, Indriyanam hi charatam yanmano no vidhiyate tad asya harati pragyam vayo navam ivam bhasi. A famous shloka. As the strong wind sweeps away the boat which is there on the water body, similarly, even one roaming sense is enough, on which the mind focuses, is enough to carry away man's intelligence. One roaming sense is enough. One roaming sense with sense gratificated desire is enough. And in third chapter, Shloka 34 says, Indriyasyendriyasyarthe ragadveshau vyavastitau tayorna vasham agachet tauya asya paripanthinau. There are principles to regulate attachment and aversion pertaining to senses and their sense objects. See, Krishna knows where we are going to struggle, and he is speaking about that in the initial chapters itself. One should not come under the control of such attachment and aversion because they are stumbling blocks in the path of self-realization. So anyone who is there on the spiritual path, these two things are going to be stumbling blocks, attachment and aversions to material things of this material world. So how to curb the restlessness now, which is arising from restlessness of the mind due to attachment or aversion? In order to regulate laulya, here we are talking about restlessness. In the form of restlessness of mind, one has to take shelter of Bhakti Devi. One has to take the process of Bhakti, take the shelter of the process of Bhakti. So what does that mean? When the cause of mind's restlessness is sense gratification, and this restlessness is the main obstacle in the practice of devotional service, then all sensual activities should be dovetailed in the service of the Lord, and the attachment to sense gratification should be transformed into attachment for the Lord. So this is what is called as parampara. Prabhupada never spoke something apart from this. Bhaktivinoda Thakur highlights that we have to dovetail our sense gratification in service of the Lord, the first thing. And second, the attachment to the sense gratification should be transformed into attachment to the Lord. Attachment will be there. Without attachment, we cannot sustain. But that has to be transferred in the devotional realm. Then the mind becomes fixed in devotional service by taking shelter of that attachment. Whatever you are attached to, just dovetail in service of the Lord. And if you are attached to some particular sense gratification, yes, try to get attached to the lotus feet of the Lord by practice of devotional service. When the objects of all these senses are associated with in a devotional mood, then the mind becomes fixed on the Lord. See, we might say that we shouldn't do sense gratification, but how is it possible? We have senses, sense objects are around. So when they come in touch, sense gratification is obvious. And senses cannot starve without sense gratification. Sense gratification must happen. But here, the sense gratification that is happening, the senses and sense objects, when they come together, they should come under the jurisdiction of devotional service. It should come in that devotional mood. Like for example, tongue naturally wants to taste something very tasty, something very delicious. So how do we take the sense object to the sense that is tongue in the devotional realm? By prasad. You honor prasad. And with time, the mood also changes, you see. So now I am a sense gratifier. So even prasad, I am eating, not honoring. So with time, when the mood changes, so what happens? So when the mood changes, from eating, it becomes honoring. So it is in the devotional realm. But if it is not in the devotional realm, never it's going to happen like this, where from sense gratification we get attached to the lotus feet of the Lord. When it is said we have to transform our attachment, we have to focus on this aspect. So now I'm eating prasad, and with time, when I'm hearing Shravanam is going on, and when my heart is getting cleansed, the realization will go deeper and deeper that what I'm eating is not mere food, but it is remnants of Krishna. And someday that mood will come, okay, I'm so fortunate, I'm getting these remnants of Krishna. And then the mood changes, where every morsel, now I want to remember Krishna. This is called as transfer of attachment. Therefore, the senses and sense object can come together only with one intention of doing devotional service. Even when it comes to sex, so the male and female have to come together with only one desire, and that is to beget a Krishna conscious child. And when the desire is that, the mood is to beget a Krishna conscious child, so no more it remains sense gratification, but then it becomes devotional service. Among the objects of senses, aversion should be applied. So till now, attachment, Bhaktivinoda Thakur is talking about. Then he's talking about aversion. Aversion should be applied on those which are unfavorable for devotional service. So as of now, see, what are our attachments and aversions? That which I like, I become attached to it. That which is not helping me for my sense gratification, I become averse to that particular thing. Like for example, some bitter foodstuff, be it karela or neem or whatever. Now that is not giving sense gratification to my tongue. So naturally, averse. I don't like it. But then doesn't matter how many gulab jamuns are kept. We can pack and keep it and eat the entire day. Why? Because now that sense gratification I can feel, I'm attached to it. So this is called as attachment and aversion. So therefore it is said that with time, one has to analyze and remain away from those sense objects or use this aversion towards those objects which are unfavorable for devotional service. This is active contemplation of a sadhaka. And attachment should be applied on those which are favorable for devotional service. So there is no question of just giving up that also which is favorable. No, that is not yukta vairagya. That is phalgo vairagya. So this is about restlessness of the mind. But until the restlessness of the intelligence is vanquished, how will the restless mind be controlled? Because we understand we have senses first, then we have mind, and then we have intelligence, and then we have spirit soul. So intelligence is supposed to control the mind. Without mind being controlled by the intelligence, there is no question of mind control. So restlessness of the intelligence has to be vanquished first, and then we can do the rest. The mind can regulate attachment and aversion for sense objects by the strength of intelligence only. Because intelligence will tell what is right, what is wrong. Without it, it's not possible. The intelligence is that which discriminates between mind's good and bad propensities. So this is what is intelligence all about. Intelligence discriminates between mind's good and bad propensities. So the intelligence is also restless. Now just imagine what's going to happen. Now Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in his scholarly style, he gives two classifications of intelligence. 2 times 2 different categories. The first category that he says is intelligence that is resolute and intelligence that is multi-branched. Yes, all the scholarly devotees. Please tell which shloka talks about this. Yes. Second chapter, shloka 41. Together, everyone. Vyavasayatmika buddhi ekah kuru nandana bahushakha hi anantascha buddhayo vyavasayina. There's another shloka also which talks about this. Bhogaishwarya prasaktanam taya partachetasam vyavasayatmika buddhi samadho na vidhiyate. 244 Bhagavad Gita. So now, let's talk about multi-branched first and then we'll go to the resolute one. When it comes to multi-branched, Bhogaishwarya prasaktanam, asakta. And there is a pra that is added, very much attached to what? Bhoga and Aishwarya. Sense enjoyment and the opulence. And therefore, there is no question of Vyavasayatmika Buddhi. That is one-pointed, focused determination to do devotional service. So what are the different things which comes in this category? Disturbance such as lust, desire to attain heavenly planets, increasing activities that produce enjoyment and opulence, and rejection of spiritual world. All these arise from what? Multi-branched intelligence of irresolute persons. So whenever we have all these different, you see, you'll find anyone who has got all this, they will not believe in spiritual world. And at the same time, you will see that they'll be multi-branched. Kya karu samajh nahi aayega unko life mein. Always different things they'll be aiming at. But when it comes to resolute intelligence, Vyavasayatmika Buddhi, those are the people whose intelligence is fixed in samadhi, are transcendently situated and have steady minds. And their symptoms are given in Bhagavad Gita. Shloka 55 and 56 talks about Sthita Pragya. So there it is said, when a man gives up all varieties of desire for sense gratification which arise from mental concoction, and when his mind thus purified finds satisfaction in the self alone, then he is said to be in pure transcendental consciousness. One who is not disturbed in mind even amidst the threefold miseries or elated when there is happiness, and who is free from attachment, fear and anger, vita, raga, bhaya, is called a sage of steady mind. Now basically, the thing that is given is for the intelligence is one has to give up all varieties for desire of sense gratification. Then there is question of steady mind, then there is question of resolute intelligence. Always there is no possibility. Second type of classification, that one is resolute and multi-branched. The second type of classification that is given here is mundane intelligence and spiritual intelligence. Mundane intelligence basically means the propensity to discriminate between good and bad under the dictation of the mind. That is called as mundane intelligence. So intelligence is controlled by the mind, and then the discrimination that the mind is giving, that's what intelligence is also taking. Spiritual intelligence means the intelligence to discriminate between good and bad under the dictation of the soul. That is spiritual intelligence. So under the dictation of the soul, the intelligence is able to distinguish what is good and what is bad. So this is mundane and spiritual intelligence. And very nicely, it is described. Indriyani paranyahur, indriyabhya param manah, manasastu para buddhir, yo buddhe paratas tusah. So as we already discussed, matter, above matter we have senses, and above senses we have intelligence, above intelligence we have soul. Mind, then intelligence and soul. But there is false ego also that is there. And therefore it is said, when do we call it as mundane intelligence? When intelligence also pervertedly accepts materialism only under the control of false ego. So when the intelligence is controlled by the false ego, when the person is controlled by the false ego, so at that time his intelligence is mundane. Why? Because all the time his thought process is this is mine, this is mine, this is mine. In the today's purport also, you see, Srila Prabhupada makes this point. He thinks that he belongs to a particular nation, family, country or creed. These are all upadhis, and one has to become free from these upadhis. So here we understand when someone is there under the false ego, so at that time the intelligence is mundane. And when the intelligence is controlled by the pure ego, then what happens? One does not identify with his body, but when he identifies with his Swarupa, and that is he being the servant of Krishna. So that time the intelligence is called as pure intelligence. I hope you understand the difference between mundane intelligence and pure intelligence. When a living entity, but by the way, how do we get this pure intelligence? When a living entity realizes himself as a pure spiritual particle, then a spiritual ego in the form of identifying himself as a servant of Krishna naturally arises. Basically, there is no other option that is there. One has to realize we are servant of Krishna. We have no other option. Only when we realize we are servant of Krishna, then comes true ego, and then comes the next, that is pure intelligence or steady intelligence. At that time, the intelligence in its pure form rejects materialism and accepts spiritualism. So we might artificially try to reject various sense gratificatory objects of this material world, but actually we'll become completely spiritual only when we realize that I'm not this body, I'm spirit soul, I'm part and parcel of Krishna, I'm supposed to serve Krishna. He is my only master. And at that time, in that realized state, a living entity has no other desire than the service of the Lord. Therefore, he rejects all the material things as insignificant. Otherwise, it's difficult. And such a person is called as Sthita Pragya or Sthitadhi. That is the one with the steady mind. Now, being empowered by spiritual potency, the intelligence then becomes steady and controls the mind by regulating them. So, with this state, when someone reaches this state, the intelligence is steady and that controls the mind. Then the mind, under the direction of intelligence, controls the senses by regulating them. And a favorable mood for devotional service manifests in the sense objects. Now, this is something which is very, very important. So, intelligence will control the mind will control the senses, and that's how the favorable circumstance will develop and will be able to do devotional service with consistency. Or reach that stage of sthai bhav, where there will be no ups and downs. It will just go on and on and on and on. That will be such a blissful state if we reach that stage. This is called as real sense control. Again, he mentions one point. One should spiritualize the senses and control them with the mind. And we know how to spiritualize the senses. We engage senses in service of the Lord. And one should spiritualize the mind and control it with the intelligence. Savai mana Krishna pada. By this process, laulyam in the form of restlessness of intelligence and mind is vanquished. So this is the first topic that he has covered. Restlessness of the mind, how to control the restlessness of the mind. Just to revise, since it's technical. So one is, restlessness of the mind can be controlled by dovetailing the various activities in service of the Lord. We can allow the senses and sense object to come together only in the realm or in the boundaries of devotional service. What else? Aversion and attachment? Unfavorable to devotional service, not for our sense gratification. So aversion should be used for those which are averse to sense gratification or which are unfavorable for devotional service. Aversion should be applied to those which are unfavorable to devotional service. I think I mixed something. Okay. What about intelligence? Okay.
Multi-branch is the one that the person has lust full of many things. And resolute is the one which is
focused on devotional service. And the second type of classification that he gives is spiritual and mundane. And how can we get this spiritual intelligence? Yes, only when we realize we are servant of Krishna. Jivera Swarup hoy, Krishna re Nityadas. There is no other option. We have to come to this stage. Then, whatever we hear in Shastra, that will all manifest in front of us, in front of our eyes. Okay, let's go to the next one. That is greed. So, the second meaning of laulya is greed. If greed is directed to other objects, then how can it be applied in relation with Krishna? Greed should be carefully engaged in service of Krishna. This is the first statement that Bhaktivinoda Thakur is making. He is saying if we are greedy for various things of this world, then where is the question of becoming engaged in service of the Lord? Not possible. Therefore, he is saying greed should be carefully engaged in service of Krishna. Greed for material sense enjoyment should be conquered by above mentioned method, which he has just mentioned, about restlessness of the mind and restlessness of the intelligence. That is why it is said that persons who are overcome by lust and greed cannot become as pure through the process of yoga as they can be by serving Krishna. So through Ashtanga Yoga process and other yoga systems which are there, one cannot come to this platform of controlling this lust and greed, not to that great extent the way it can be done by practicing bhakti, that is by serving Krishna. So what greed should we develop? Because greed is something that will always be there. That laulyam that we have to develop is towards serving Krishna and serving his devotees, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur highlights chanting the holy names. So when you develop greed for these three, serving Krishna, serving the devotees and serving the holy name, that is by chanting the holy names, then the person will get rid of the inferior things which are there, greed for inferior things. Therefore, these are the three, which we have to cultivate, in our day-to-day life. Very, very important. So when, we serve the Lord under the guidance of the spiritual master, when we serve the Vaishnavas who are around us without making any distinction between who is junior, who is senior, equal. And the third one is we continue chanting the holy names as a vow that we have taken, under the guidance of the spiritual master. When you do these three, Bhaktivinoda Thakur makes a point that there will be no greed for inferior things. And a little bit higher, he talks about Raganuga Bhakti. So when one becomes greedy by seeing the Vrajvasi's service to Krishna is very fortunate. When someone is saying, oh, how amazing, Yashoda Maya is serving Krishna like this. Oh, Radharani is serving Krishna like this. Oh, Gopas are serving Krishna like this. The cows of Vrindavan are serving like this. So that time, the person is called as very fortunate. And by the mercy of that greed, he attains the qualification for Raga Bhakti, the spontaneous devotional service. Because that greed will help him, that laulyam will help him to get pulled towards Krishna spontaneously. As of now, since we have greed for sense gratification, so we have to pull ourselves from here and forcefully apply here in the service of the Lord. But then when naturally the greed is there towards the Lord, then where is the force? It's all natural. It's like the river flowing towards the ocean. Like that, we will flow towards the Lord for serving Him. Once material greed is vanquished in proportion to the development of greed for Agatmika service. So, when our greed for serving the Lord increases, proportionately our greed for material inferior things will go down. This is the bottom line that is there for greed. We have to be very clear about this. It's not going to happen that we artificially try to curb the greed on the material side. No. Our greed should increase for serving Krishna. And this is a practice that one has to do. Every moment has to be engaged in service of the Lord. Then it is possible. Otherwise not. Otherwise what is there? One will have greed for nice foodstuffs, drinking, sleeping, smoking, drinking wine. Then what happens? One's devotion will diminish. Greed for, and especially he highlights, greed for wine, wealth and women is most contrary to devotional principles. The 3 W's which can vanquish our devotional life. That is wine, wealth and women. Never forget these 3 W's. Wine, wealth and women. It has all the potency to destroy our devotional service. Next, he is talking about this point that those who have desire for attaining pure devotional service should carefully give up such things. So these 3 W's should be given up carefully, consciously by the devotee. Ye subconsciously nahi hoga. One has to give it consciously, give it up consciously. Whether for auspicious things or sinful things, greed for anything not related to Krishna is most dangerous. Greed only in relation to Krishna is the cause of all auspiciousness. So any greed that we have which does not have Krishna in it, please remember it is dangerous for our spiritual life. This is what Bhaktivinoda Thakur is saying. And the qualification to enter the spiritual world, to attain Krishna Prema, Rupa Goswami says, the only cost that we have to pay is this laulyam, greed. Greed to attain Krishna, greed to attain Krishna Prema. So this is the second topic that he covers, that is greed. The third meaning of laulya is desire. And this desire is also very, very important. We have been speaking about this point that the core of devotional life is desire. The desire is going to decide, are we a pure devotee or are we mixed devotee? Are we Guni Bhuta Bhakta, Pradhani Bhuta Bhakta or Kevala Bhakta? Then we'll get to know that which category we belong to. Therefore, there are 2 types of desires which Bhaktivinoda Thakur describes. These 2 types of desires are the ones which will not allow a devotee to become a Kevala Bhakta or a pure devotee. What are these 2 types of desires? Simple. Karma and Jnana. Material enjoyment and desire for liberation. Again and again this is given the various writings of our acharyas. They are very fond of these 2. Karma and Jnana. Karma and Jnana. Again and again. Various commentaries also on Bhagavad Gita. Baldev Vidyabhushan Bhaktivinoda Thakur, they write about this point. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes about this. And even Rupa Goswami, when he is giving the definition of pure devotional service, he makes this point again. Anyabhilashta shunyam jnana karmadhyanavritam. This is what is making. One has to be free from the desires of karma and jnana. Unless one gives up these 2 types of desires, one cannot practice pure devotional service. Now, material sense gratification, we understand. Desire for material sense gratification. That luxury, I want better sense gratification. Desire for liberation also means I want to get rid of that particular situation that I'm stuck in. So these are the 2 things. When we have these 2 desires, then the person, advancement in Krishna consciousness on the pure devotional path becomes difficult. Therefore, Srila Rupa Goswami, he highlights in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Bhukti Mukti Sprihayavat Pichachi Hridi Vartate Tavat Bhakti Sukhasyartha Katham Abhyudayo Bhavet. He is saying that once someone has this Bhukti and Mukti Spriha, desire for Bhukti, that is sense gratification, Mukti for liberation, they are like Pichachi, they are like witch. And with that witch, as long as these witches remain within the heart, how can one feel transcendental bliss? As long as these 2 witches remain in the heart, there is no possibility of enjoying the transcendental bliss of devotional service. Jnanis will get heart attack when they hear all this. They're aspiring for liberation. And here our Acharya is saying, it's a witch, Pichachi. And they want to embrace that Pichachi. But here it is said that one has to get rid of it. So when it comes to material sense gratification, again there are two types which Bhaktivinoda Thakur describes. Worldly enjoyment and heavenly enjoyment. Worldly enjoyment is very clear. Wealth, women, children, opulence, victory, good food, good sleep, associating with women for sense enjoyment, good birth and other pleasures are all worldly enjoyments. So whatever we desire for sense gratification, all that comes in this category. That is worldly enjoyment. And this is adharmic basically. Worldly enjoyment is adharmic because it's instant enjoyment. But people in the past, they would be having dharmic enjoyment, and that is, they would desire enjoyment in the next life, and that is heavenly enjoyment. Going to heaven and drinking nectar there and doing sense gratification which is not hindered by old age, that is called as heavenly enjoyment. So people in the past were intelligent. People now are dumb. So people now want, abhi current enjoyment I want. How can I postpone my old age and enjoy that time also? In the old age also, how can I enjoy? That is the plan making business of this material world as of now. But people in the past, they were intelligent. They were like, enjoy karna hai to swarg mein, not here. Just by naming a club, pub, bar or something like that as swarga, doesn't make it swarga for sure. But actually going to swarga and drinking the nectar there and enjoying is what people would relish. And they would do a lot of austerity for that. A lot of yajnas they would do. When the heart is filled with desire to enjoy, one cannot selflessly worship Krishna. Not possible. When the heart is filled with this material desire, so one cannot selflessly worship Krishna. Because now when we go in front of the Lord and we are filled with these desires, so at that time the seva that we are offering will always exchange that seva with the fulfillment of the desire that we have. See Lord, I am offering you one flower today. This one desire you fulfill. This one sense gratification which I am hankering for a long time, please fulfill that. See, I did Ekadashi, please fulfill this desire of mine. I want to become very famous. And Ekadashi Mahatma also says that anyone who fasts on this day will become famous in all the three worlds. Will become very opulent. The ones who are not having kids will get kids, etc., etc., etc. So when we have all these material desires, what will happen? This is exactly what will happen. We will not be able to serve the Lord selflessly for sure. Therefore, unless the desire for enjoyment is completely uprooted from the heart, one's progress in devotional service will be obstructed. If all these material enjoyments are favorable to devotional service, then householders can accept them without sin. In all that case, these enjoyments are not called enjoyments, but rather they are means to progress in the devotee's life. Now, in general, when it comes to a family, when it comes to associating with women is sense enjoyment, and what are the other things? Wealth is a problem, children are a problem, kingdom is a problem, victory is a problem, good food is a problem, good sleep is a problem. If all this is worldly enjoyment and one has to give it up, then it's very difficult. Because the majority of the crowd that exists in the world is not of renunciants, it's of householders. Therefore, if this is there in the boundaries of devotional service, then these things will be the means to get closer to Krishna. Like if there is a wife who is assisting the husband in doing devotional service, she is a benediction. She is for sure a benediction. If the opulence that the person has is utilized in service of the Lord to preach the mission of Krishna consciousness, it's a benediction. If the children, right from childhood, they are given Krishna conscious samskaras, and they become nice devotees, just imagine, they will do massive service to preach, in this entire material world. Massive service of preaching they'll be able to do. Because right from childhood, they are trained. And good food and good sleep, if that is there, the person can keep oneself healthy, and the goal is serving the Lord. Therefore, in this way, we understand that all these worldly enjoyments will become the means to attain Krishna if they are not an obstruction to devotional service. If they are favorable to devotional service, then yes, they can be accepted. That's the point that is made here. And desire for liberation must be rejected. There are 5 types of liberation, as we all know. What are those? Sayujya, Sarupya, Salokya, Sashti, Samipya. And Sayujya is something which Vaishnavas spit at. I don't want Sayujya. Other four are Vaishnava liberations which are there. Other four are liberations for personalist. As soon as a living entity becomes free from material bondage by the strength of devotion, he immediately attains liberation. Therefore, he does not aspire, हाँ मुझे ये चार में से ये चाहिए. No. He renders devotional service and byproduct of that is mukti. Therefore, he does not have the desire for liberation only. क्योंकि उसको पता है byproduct is mukti. Why should I desire for that? The liberation, however, is not the principal fruit of bhakti. Then what is the principal fruit? The pure love for Krishna attained by liberated soul is the principal fruit of sadhana bhakti. So the topmost thing that we will be attaining by doing sadhana bhakti is not liberation, is not mukti. This has to be clear. Going back home back to Godhead is not not the principal fruit. The principal fruit is attaining Krishna Prem. And the byproduct of attaining Krishna Prem is going back home back to Godhead. So this has to be very clear with time. Initially, when we preach to newcomers, we do say that yes, goal of life is to go back home back to Godhead. That is there. But then we have to understand going back home back to Godhead is just a byproduct of attaining Krishna Prem. So the aim is attaining Krishna Prem and not anything else. Yes. And what is Krishna Prem? Selflessly serving the Lord. With time, that becomes spontaneous. And the service that is rendered will be served with or offered with love and devotion to the Lord. Now, Sarvam Bhattacharya, he is making some strong points regarding this. Salokyadi chariyadi haya seva dwara tabo kadachit bhakta kare angikara. If there is a chance to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then the pure devotee will accept Salokya, Sarupya, Samipya and Sarshti, but never Sayujya. Only if there is chance to serve, opportunity to serve, he will accept. Sayujya shunite bhaktera haya grana bhaya naraka vanchaye tabo Sayujya nalaya. It is said a devotee will accept Naraka, but he will not accept Sayujya. He will not accept merging, that liberation, which is merging in the existence. That is either, that will be described. I will not be the spoiler. The next sloka talks about the two types of Sayujya Mukti. Brahme Ishvara Sayujya Dui Ta Prakara Brahma Sayujya Haite Ishvara Sayujya Dikkara. The two kinds of Sayujya. One is merging in Brahma Jyoti, which devotees don't accept. But more abominable than that is merging in the body of the Lord, which devotees spit at. Dikkara. I don't want this. So in this way, these are two types of Sayujyas. And the devotee is averse to this. He is not interested to go for it. He is not subscribing to this one aspect of Sayujya. Now this question might come, why is technical aspect, why now the Acharya is describing so much? Because at times we will not know which desire we have. We will not know which desire we have. So therefore, these things have to be very clear that I am not supposed to desire to merge in Brahman. Along with that, I am not supposed to think of merging in the Lord also. And if I am aspiring to go back home back to Godhead, why am I aspiring? Am I tired of this material world, so I am supposed to go, so I am planning to go, or I want to go to serve the Lord selflessly? To analyze all this, our Acharyas have given this. With only one goal when we aspire to attain Krishna Prem or go back home back to Godhead, that is to serve the Lord selflessly without any tinge of material desires, without any tinge of selfish desires. That is what is expected. That is what is accepted by a devotee. He doesn't want to get rid of this material world, so he wants to enter the spiritual world. No, it's not like that. He has this intense desire to serve the Lord, so he wants to enter the spiritual world. So to analyze all this, our Acharyas have given all these technical, kitna categories he gave in this article, two. Only so that we understand that I shouldn't be belonging to this category nor this category. The purport is that the liberation of a devotee in the form of freedom from bondage is easily attained by the will of Krishna. That is why one should not pollute his endeavor for devotional service with desires. So when it comes to the desire, No material desire and no desire for liberation. So what desire I must have? To serve Krishna selflessly. This is the only desire. So we have to cultivate this desire with time. We will get material desires. We will get desire for liberation. But even in that situation, we have, like say, we are caught up in a very, very precarious condition. So in that situation also, a devotee thinks, in this critical situation, how can I serve Krishna? So what does that mean? He is not desiring for liberation, but he is desiring to serve even in that situation. He understands that every crisis is an opportunity to get closer to Krishna. That selfless devotee, will be able to attain the highest state. So we have discussed three meanings of laulyam. First one is restlessness. Restlessness of mind and restlessness of intelligence. And in intelligence also we discussed about one-pointed, multi-branched and mundane and spiritual intelligence. Then about the greed. So we spoke about the greed. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur describes very nicely that one shouldn't have the material greed, but one should have the spiritual greed of three main aspects: serving the Lord, serving the devotees, and chanting the holy names. Greed for these three is very, very important. And when one develops this greed, he develops spontaneous devotional service. He pays the price of greed, and what he gets in return is the commodity of spontaneous devotional service. And then the desire, two desires which our acharyas have condemned always. Desire for sense gratification, that is material enjoyment, which are again two types, worldly and heavenly. And second is liberation. And liberation are of five types. And the devotees are not interested in Sayujya, be it Brahma Sayujya or Ishvara Sayujya. And devotees are interested in the other four only if they get service opportunity in the spiritual world. So in this way, laulyam, now we have to understand it properly and accordingly implement in our day-to-day life as sadhakas. Thank you very much. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki, Granthrat Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki.